Let's talk about a couple of tips and tricks in beam gauge that are useful things to have. There's a button right up here in the upper right hand corner. It's called a "What is this" button, and there's also another one called "Help." If we click the "Help" button, it's just going to bring up our menu for us. That's great. Allows you to be able to look at the manual and kind of read through it page by page if you wanted to. But one of my favorite ones is the "What's this?" This is a lot easier button to use. It's a lot more informative, because when I click this, it's going to change my cursor to have a little question mark next to it. And I can go anywhere in the beam gauge screen and I can click on that if I want to know more information specifically about that section, and it'll take me right to it in the manual. So if I want to know more about computations, any computation, I can mouse over and click on it and it'll take me right to that section of the manual. Allows me to be able to get right to where I want to go a lot quicker instead of having to read every single page in the manual. Another tip that's great in beam gauge is if I want to know a little bit information about something, I can, like one of the results, I can just mouse over it and it'll tell me a little bit more about it. So if I put my mouse cursor right over the D4 sigma Y method, it'll pop up a little bubble that'll tell me more about that. In fact, it also even lists the ISO document number that you could go to and reference to read a lot more about it. In Beam Gauge Professional, we actually have a separate manual you can use for doing automation. Beam Gauge Automation allows you to be able to take data right from Beam Gauge and pump it into another program. So let's say I want to be able to report that beam diameter to another program to be able to control some motors, to be able to change the separation between some lenses and change my magnification. What I can do is I can click on the Windows Start bubble, go to All Programs, go to the Spiricon folder, and inside the Beam Gauge Professional folder, there's another subfolder called Documentation. In that folder is a web page that allows me to be able to open up the Beam Gauge Automation interface to be able to read through the manual and start creating my own automation interface to feed back data from Beam Gauge into another application for control. One of the things we can do in Beam Gauge is we can actually make Beam Gauge very complex or very simple to use. And it's all on what you turn on and what you turn off. So right now I have 2D and 3D displays that I've got turned on, but I'm only looking at one of them at a time. But if I want to move my 2D panel out, I can just grab that tab and I can move that panel over into a different section. I can put them side by side so I can see my 2D and 3D at the same time. What if I want to chart some of my results? I can chart my results at the same time. So any of those results that I want to see, I can right click, turn on a chart. Then I can bring that chart out and I can float it. And I can turn my 2D on. So I've got my 2D going and I've got my 3D going, and I'm making it very complex and I can't see everything. Or I can see everything all at one time. Beam Gauge is very powerful. I can float these windows, I can move them to another screen, I can minimize them, I can turn them back on. I can even hide my upper menu. That way if I want to, I can make my beam profile screen as big as I possibly can so I can see it on the other side of the room. That's all done in a setup file. And if we want to, we can actually load those different setup files. And there's some core ones that are based in Beam Gauge. You've got some novice, you've got some advanced different settings files you can use to make it very simple or very complex. So I'm going to load one of the novice ones with the second moment beam profile, beam width method, and it'll make it a little bit more simple to see. There we go. A lot more simple. Or I can turn on a lot of functions and make it very complex. You can make it easy for an operator, or you can make it as complex as a scientist wants to make it.